Hello, and welcome to Rethinking Our History, where we seek to shed a light on events that have been forgotten and covered up, and to make us all question how much do we really know about our history? I'm Felicia.
And I'm Ian, and we are here to reveal all the sordid details of history that have been swept under the rug. Get ready to get angry, be curious, and maybe have a laugh or two as we rethink our history.
Hello, friends.
Hey guys.
Thanks for joining us for another lesson, number 11,
History.
history lesson. History.
Hey, it's important to know your history, guys.
We're going to be a little,
Very important.
I don't know. We're going to be a little different
Yeah, for
coming
sure.
up because we've both hit a wall of no fucks left to give
Yeah,
after this election,
yeah.
and we would be remiss not to talk about it. We may do a bigger one episode on it at some point, but we are a history podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm so tired of the historical events that we live through as elder millennials.
Yeah.
I'm so
Yeah, I
tired.
mean, like at first, like going to work, I'm quiet for sure about things, but this is our history podcast. This
Yeah.
is ours.
Yeah.
We started this to because we like working together and we have the same opinions about things.
Yeah.
Um, and so, this is ours. We're not going to be quiet on something that is ours.
Especially not on a
because
fucking history podcast, y'all.
because this is, it's for us. We did this for us, and it makes us happy to speak up about things that we care about.
Yeah.
And yeah, so
Yeah. Yeah. Neither one of us is happy. I spent the day
yeah,
after that day just crying,
yeah,
and my anxiety was through the roof. And then I woke up to the next day and I started seeing people posting, especially black women, lots and lots of black women that's like, all right, we done.
yeah.
We done.
I'm
We
definitely
done.
done with a lot of people, like, and people at work can tell.
As
So,
black women you see stepping in for people at grocery stores, black women you see stopping fights in schools. If a woman we not doing it anymore.
yeah,
We're not doing it anymore. Don't come crying to me when your eggs don't go down
yeah,
and your gas prices just get higher. I
yeah.
don't want to hear it,
No, I don't either.
especially if you voted for him.
Yeah,
Mm-mm. Don't want it. Don't care. You get what you get and you don't pitch a fit.
yeah.
All right. Well, let's knock the normal business out.
Okay.
If you found us here first and are a fan of the paranormal, give our flagship show, The Paranormal Lovers, a try. Almost 100 episodes about everything from hauntings to UFOs and cults. If you would be so kind, give us a follow and share on social media Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. Videos of these episodes can be found on YouTube. To find us on any of these platforms, just search for The Paranormal Lovers in the search bar. If you would like to monetarily support the show, we have two ways you can do so. The first is our shop over at theparanormallovers.threadless.com. There we have two designs that the proceeds will go to hurricane recovery. Second, we have a Patreon at patreon.com/the paranormal lovers. For $5 a month, you get early access to unedited videos of both shows, as well as two stickers a month. One will be from our shop, and one will be handmade by Ian. Once we have 20 Patreons, we will be adding bi weekly family movie nights. And y'all, I just saw Harrison Ford turn into the Red Hulk for the next installment of Captain America. I'm fucking there for it. I want to sit down and chill with my peeps, my loves, and watch that shit and watch us all
Yeah.
go, Han Solo, what are you doing?
Yeah.
I got goosebumps just thinking about it. Plus, we got Black Captain America. So,
Yeah.
and finally, if you have a personal story, a topic request, or you just want to yell about our liberal views, email us at theparanormallovers@yahoo.com.
Just if you are yelling at us, then don't be expecting that we're not going to yell back.
Honestly, at this point, they're not worth the energy. They will
This is
get
true.
deleted.
Yeah.
Like, I might not even read it.
Right.
Delete. Be
Not
like,
worth the
well,
time.
your opinion's stupid. Delete.
Mhm.
And honestly, that's just the way it is. Your vibe attracts your tribe. And if you're not a part of this tribe,
Yeah.
don't even waste your energy on us. Please go
That's
find
it.
something else that you're passionate about. Waste your energy on that. Don't waste your energy on us because we don't give a fuck anymore.
That's why I think so many people at work were shocked when I stopped talking to them, and they're like, well, it's all right. It'll get better. And I'm sitting there thinking in my mind, no, the fuck it's not. It's fucking not.
Nope, it's not. And we ain't going to do a damn thing to help them.
No.
Mm-mm. So I want to start this episode with a quote, though not word for word, from a Cherokee guy that I follow on Instagram. And I'm pretty sure it was Buffalo Town that did it, but it could have been around the Bound 828.
Yeah.
Don't remember. I do recommend giving them both a follow because they're awesome.
Yeah.
But it's something to the effect of Native American history cannot be learned in a month.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that is very true, which is why we try to cover their legends and culture throughout the year.
For
But
sure.
Of course, with it being Native American History Month, we have to highlight some of the worst things that were done to the indigenous people of this land.
Yeah.
And one of the worst things that we, at least here in the North Carolina, learned about in school was the Trail of Tears.
Oh, snap. This one's going to be rough.
It's a long one too. So
yeah.
In the early 1800s, throughout the southern end of the Appalachian Mountain Range down to the tip of Florida, there was an estimated 125,000 indigenous people living in just southeast North America. Or the America, whatever. But the colonizers had showed up just a century ago and claimed the country for themselves. And to make the most of their new land, the Indian had to be removed so that the black enslaved folks could come in and work the land. We're going to kick you out so we can bring in these other people.
What the hell?
This led to the people of the land being forced to walk hundreds of miles in a march that the colonizers had probably hoped would take care of their quote-unquote Indian problem. The problem in their eyes was that no matter how much they tried, the dirty savage Indians would just not submit to their rule. Our very first president hoped that quote-unquote civilizing them would be enough. This included introducing them to Christianity, teaching them to read and write in the Queen's English, and teaching them about personal ownership versus community property. And while this probably may make many of us uncomfortable, that also included owning enslaved people. And it worked somewhat. Some of the people adopted these new ways, mainly people within the Choctaw, Chickasaw, Seminole, Creek, which was actually the Muskogee, and Cherokee people. Colonizers dubbed those who adopted these practices the quote-unquote 5 civilized tribes. It's going to be a lot of me going today, because
it's like one good thing I started doing is like when I hear something that I don't agree with, if I'm in public, I'll just like cough at people. Like they're like, Jesus,
are you okay?
I'm like, just getting out the bad energy.
Yeah, right. But no matter how much the people of the land adopted these new practices and integrated themselves with their new quote-unquote neighbors, the colonizers wanted more, particularly the land that the people still held control of. It seemed that the land would be perfect for growing cotton, but the colonizers had to take it first. And then they found gold in Georgia, which led to the second gold rush, the Georgia Gold Rush, which is not something I learned about in school.
Where's it at?
Georgia.
Just like the whole state?
It said Georgia. Huh. I'm like, okay. Well, I'm guessing that it's...
I want to go prospecting.
I have a feeling the gold belt probably runs like down. Through it.
Yeah, yeah.
So like you'd have to look at a map at the gold belt.
Yep. Just follow the slate.
This led to much bloodshed and crimes against the people of the land. Colonizers would steal their property, burn their homes, squat on their land, and in many instances just murdered anybody that lived there so they could take the land.
Mm.
The newly formed states took matters into their own hands as well and made laws that limited the sovereignty of the tribes and stripped them of more of their land. And although the Supreme Court ruled against the practices in Worcester versus Virginia in 1832, stating no state had the right to strip sovereignty from the tribes, no one enforced this ruling.
Right.
What's even more is that Andrew Basaltz Jackson, thanks for that moniker, Bailey, even said
Eating people's faces.
that something to the effect of like, well, if he passed the law, then let him enforce it.
Mm.
Jackson was one of the worst who actively worked to remove the people from their land by whatever means necessary, but if he could have his way, it was by massacre.
Right.
Before his time as the 7th president of these here United States, he was a general in the Army. I cannot recommend enough people go listen to episode 4 of Bailey Sarian's show Dark History. It can be found on any platform, including YouTube. She goes deep into Jackson and his life and the absolute terrible crimes he committed against the people of this land.
Eating people's faces.
She was like, have you guys seen a picture of what he actually looked like when he got older? He looked like he was on bath salts. And that's where she came up with Andrew Basaltz Jackson.
Right.
What I will say here is he spent most of his time leading massacres against the Creek people of Georgia and Alabama and the Seminoles in Florida, leading to thousands of acres of lands going to the hands of white settlers. As president, he kept up his assault, but now in the form of the Indian Removal Act of 1830. This gave them the power to quote unquote trade native held land in the quote unquote Cotton Kingdom, which literally makes me a little nauseous to say that out loud.
Right.
For land in the newly acquired area of present day Oklahoma, which they had named the Indian Colonization Zone. This zone was to be a buffer between the colonies and the land held by England and Spain. So they were like, we're going to take you off this land so we can bring some enslaved folks over and grow some cotton and rice. Y'all don't forget the rice. I'm Gullah Geechee. And we're going to throw you over here in the middle of the land that you are not used to whatsoever. And oh yeah, England and France are over there, and or Spain are over there, and they're probably going to try and like come through and steal our land. So y'all be a buffer there for us.
Right.
God.
What's with like these 4 different ones?
4 different what?
Trail of Tears.
I'll get to it.
Okay.
According to the law, this was supposed to be an option for the people, and no one was allowed to force their hand in the matter. But we all know that those are rules for thee and not for me when it comes to our government, and that ain't changed.
No, not one bit.
As the president, who will tell him that he cannot do something? And if they do, as we have witnessed, who will actually make him listen to their advice?
Right.
No, President Jackson was not going to be held back by the same laws the rest of us had to follow, and he would often still force communities to leave their families, to leave the land their families had been on for generations for cottons and slaves. But we are not putting the blame for this removal solely on his shoulders. He may have signed the law, but this had been in the works for at least 30 years, if not longer. White supremacy is not a one bad apple kind of issue. It's a the roots are rotting kind of problem.
Yeah.
One way that they made people feel better about the removal of the nations was the vanishing Indian myth. And I had forgot I was taught about that in school.
Yeah.
I was literally taught the vanishing Indian myth in school.
No shit.
No shit. I had no idea that there were still indigenous people in this state until we moved up here.
Huh.
This myth was fostered by the book, The Last of the... I think it's The Last of the Mohicans.
Yeah.
Written by James Fenimore Cooper. Quote, Cooper has the last of the noble and pure natives die off as nature would have it, with the last Mohican handing the continent over to Hawkeye, the nativized settler, his adopted son. Cooper had much to do with creating the U.S. origin myth to which generations of historians have dedicated themselves, fortifying what historian Francis Jennings has described as exclusion from the process of the formation of American society and culture, end quote. Yeah. Yeah, I was taught about that. And that's the other day I'd listened to Indigenous Tales Turtle Island Talk 9.
Mm-hmm.
And in it, Mike was like, I don't understand why they think that they can keep our bones. Like, we're still here. We're still alive. If you find black people bones, they go back to their family. If you find white people bones, they go back to their family.
Right.
Why do people think it's okay to keep our ancestors? And I think, and I'm not excusing it, but I think this is why they think it's okay, because
They think that the people are extinct.
they're still going off of the vanishing Indian myth, acting as if they all died out when
What the
obviously
fuck?
it's not fucking true.
No.
Admittedly, there were 6 million of them on this land before colonizers showed up, and then it got down to about 80,000 or something.
Yeah.
So they killed off quite a bit, like
Yeah.
99% of the indigenous people on this land.
It was genocide.
But they're still fucking here.
Yeah.
Okay, they're still here. Give them their goddamn ancestors back.
Sure, yeah.
In the winter of 1831, it's the first trail. What we're going to talk about, you said, what about the 4 different trails?
Mm-hmm.
There were actually 5 for these 5 different tribes. They all
Mm.
left out at different times.
Yeah.
We learned about the Trail of Tears for the Cherokee people
Yeah.
in school. We are actually going to talk about all of the Trail of Tears for the Southeast people.
Right.
In the winter of 1831, the Choctaw set out on the first trail from Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi to Oklahoma after the Treaty of Dancing Rabbit Creek. Some sources state that some of the people were chained together and marched double file. The first march set out in the winter and was meant to be done by wagon. However, flooding caused them to revise their plans. Next, they brought in ships to transport the people leaving from Memphis and heading up the Mississippi River. However, again, this was winter and the winter froze for weeks, once again forcing them to hunker in place. Food became scarce, with rations consisting of a handful of cooked corn, a turnip, and 2 cups of warm water a day.
Mm.
I want y'all
That's
to
not
think
enough.
about how much a handful of corn is, a turnip, and 2 cups of water a day.
Yeah, it's not enough water.
These are people that are literally used to walking outside their front door and picking a salad out of their yard and eating it. And this is what they're being fed now.
Right.
These are the rations that the government gave them when they forced them to leave their homelands.
Where's the meat?
In the winter?
Right.
One group that set out from another location was led by an inexperienced guide and would end up getting lost in the Lake Providence swamps. Thousands would die on this march, one leader calling it a, quote, trail of tears and death, end quote. This removal was witnessed by a French man who would go on to state, quote, in the whole scene there was an air of ruin and destruction, something which betrayed a final and irrevocable adieu. One couldn't watch without feeling one's heart wrung. The Indians were tranquil but somber and taciturn. There was one who could speak English, of whom I asked why the Choctaws were leaving their country. To be free, he answered. Could never get any other reason out of him. We watched the expulsion of one of the most celebrated and ancient American peoples, end quote. French people are nice about it anyways, Jesus.
Yeah.
It is estimated that anywhere between 2,500 and 6,000 of the Choctaw who left died on their march to the west. Down in present-day Florida, the U.S. had gotten possession of the land from Spain in the Adams-Onis Treaty in 1821. In 1832, the Seminoles were brought to Payne's Landing to go over a treaty for them to move west and hand over their land to the U.S. government. As part of the Treaty of Payne's Landing, the Seminoles would move west if they found the land to be to their liking and would be absorbed into the Creek Nation who had already moved over there. And we'll get there. At this time, the Seminoles seemed to be made up of people who were born into the nation and others who had joined the nation. Those who had joined the Seminoles from the Creek Nation did not want to go west out of fear of being killed as a traitor. In October of 32, 7 leaders set out for the new lands west of the Mississippi. They spent several months traveling and talking to leaders of the Creek Nation. In March of 33, they signed a statement that the land was acceptable. But when they returned to Florida, they claimed that they either did not sign the statement or they had been forced to sign the statement. They also stated that they could not make a decision like that for the whole nation. Villages in the Apalachicola, love that I know how to say that word, river area were easier to persuade, and in 1834 they made their way west. In December of 1835, a group of Seminoles and black men, and it doesn't say if they were enslaved or freedmen, ambushed U.S. troops marching from Tampa to Ocala, killing 107 out of 110 troops in what would become known as the Dade Massacre, which pisses me off because like they automatically call this event a massacre because it was perpetuated by black people and indigenous people,
Right.
but they called Wilmington an insurrection.
Right.
What?
Hmm.
But it finally sunk in that the Seminoles were going to resist, and the U.S. prepared for war. They ordered 500 musket balls and rounded up 500 men under General Richard Call. Indian war parties began raiding farms and villages, and the settlers found themselves fleeing to forts or even leaving the area altogether. A supply train was captured by a war party, though most of the supplies would be retrieved in another battle days later. Sugar plantations along the coast were burned, the enslaved people were freed, and many chose to join the Seminoles in their fight. All this commingling led to an offshoot of the Seminoles known as Black Seminoles. And there are actually a few smaller nations of descendants of the native people and black folks. And I can't say how often it is due to rape, unlike with white people.
Right.
But there are actually, if you Google, you can Google Black Indians
Mm-hmm.
and it will pop up different tribes of Black Indians, or
That's cool.
at least one tribe of Black Indians.
Yeah.
After a decade of war, many of the people were forced off their land to the west, but in the end, anywhere from 500 to 1,000 Seminoles who had fled into the Everglades were finally left alone. According to the Everglades Band of Seminoles, this makes them the only federally recognized tribe who did not sign a treaty. I do not know how true that is, considering parts of this country were colonized by other countries like Spain,
Right.
but that's what they claim.
Yeah.
Let's see. For the Creek Nation, the treaties began in 1814 when leaders from the nation signed the Treaty of Fort Jackson. Although they had peacefully integrated themselves into the new culture and signed these treaties peacefully, Jackson was going to use any excuse he could to take away what he wanted. When he was reminded of their peacefulness, he exclaimed that they had not cut the neck of a troublesome chief, therefore they had to pay for their mistake. Quote, Jackson opened his first peace session by faintly acknowledging the help of the friendly Creeks. That done, he turned to the Red Sticks and admonished them for listening to evil counsel. For their crime, he said the entire Creek Nation must pay. He demanded the equivalent of all expenses incurred by the U.S. in the prosecuting war, which by his calculations came to 23 million acres or 92,000 square kilometers of land, end quote.
Jesus.
23 million acres.
Wow.
Million.
That's so much land.
That's my brain is like, okay, like what size is that though? I'm like, I don't know. I don't fucking know.
It's bigger than the Biltmore House land, that's for
I
sure.
want to say, well, yeah, they only
By
have
far.
Biltmore only owns 8,000 acres.
Yeah.
They donated most of their land to oh, let me turn this volume down real quick. They donated most of their land to the parks.
Yeah.
Hang on, guys. I'm Googling something. Is the Smoky Mountains National Park by acre, by Aver? It's not what I was trying to Google. Jesus. So the Great Smoky Mountain National Park is only 522,000 acres.
Right.
So it's literally like
half the country.
That's insane. That's insane.
Yeah.
The Creek Confederacy would eventually make any further land cessions a capital crime. But in 1825, McIntosh and other chiefs signed the Treaty of Indian Springs, giving up most of the rest of the Creek Nation's land in Georgia. McIntosh would then be assassinated by other Creek people in April of 1825. So, obviously, I didn't talk about him a lot. Just
yeah.
The Creek Nation Council pled with President John Quincy Adams, stating the treaty was a fraud. Adams would go on to nullify the first treaty and replace it with the Treaty of Washington signed in 1826. Although this marked a victory for the nation, the governor of Georgia, George Thorpe, Oglethorpe, God dang it. Sorry. I was like, wait, the governor of Georgia, what do I know named Thorpe in Savannah? Damn it. Ignored this new treaty and went ahead with the removal as outlined by the first treaty. Adams would send federal troops down to stop the removal, but Governor Thorpe called out the militia, and Adams conceded to the troop, fearing a civil war. He was quoted saying, quote, "The Indians are not worth going to war over," end quote. The fuck they're not.
Right.
The fuck they're not. Like, yeah. I appreciate y'all went to war for our freedom, even though we know it's kind of a whole bunch of bullshit.
Yeah.
Because if Lincoln himself said, if I could have saved the country without freeing a single slave, I would have.
Right.
Anybody is worth going to war over. Humans.
Yeah.
Humans. Folks. I need to vape for a second, y'all. I'm frustrated.
Yeah. Hopefully history don't repeat itself on all that one. Like,
I'm not gonna speak on the indigenous people and how they voted.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was kind of 50-50 on that one. And I'm like, y'all need to go look at your history again. Y'all really need to go look at your fucking history again, because oh my God.
I mean, I would fight for indigenous people. I would fight for black people. I would fight for gay people.
I'll fight for people.
I would fight for most people.
Unless you're telling me.
Maybe not rich white people.
Unless you're telling me how I'm supposed to live my life.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to fight you.
Yeah.
Not for you. I'm going to fight you.
Yeah.
Don't tell me how to live my life. Don't tell my child how to live my life. I ain't hurting anybody. What I'm doing with my life has zero effect on your life. Leave me the fuck alone.
That's all we want.
While many of the Creek Nation had left Georgia, there were still many who lived in Alabama. The state moved to abolish the nation and force them to live under state law. The nation turned to Andrew Jackson to protect them from the state, but we know how that went. In March of 1832, they signed the Treaty of Cusseta. This took tribal land from community property to personal tracts of land. They could either sell their land and move west or stay on their land and submit to state law. They were never given the chance to make a choice, however. Settlers kept coming and squatting on their land, and they could get no help from the government or whatever passed for law enforcement in the area. What's even more, many of the Creek people were scammed out of their allotment by white scammers. After a while, some of the people got tired of being treated so poorly by their white quote-unquote neighbors. They started striking back at farms and villages in the area. In May of 1836, the Creek War of 1836 broke out when a village in Roanoke, Georgia was destroyed. After this, General Scott was sent to end the war and remove the remaining Creek people to the new Indian Territory. The Chickasaw sold their lands to the U.S. government, and after a 5-year debate, were able to purchase a portion of Choctaw land. In 1837, they made their way across the Mississippi and integrated themselves into the Choctaw Nation. Let's see. Yeah. And now, where am I at? Here in Cherokee Territory, the people were divided on what to do about the colonizers wanting to colonize. Some people thought it best to sign over their land for money and other resources, while some people wanted to make a stand and fight for their homeland. In 1835, a few hundred self appointed representatives of the Cherokee negotiated the Treaty of New Echota, named for where it would be signed in New Echota, Georgia. This effectively sold all of the Cherokee land east of the Mississippi River, an estimated 7 million acres of land, for $5 million, relocation assistance, and other compensations.
Wow.
Now, again, the people who signed this treaty from the Cherokee did not represent the nation.
Right.
They were a self-appointed council.
Yeah.
Many people felt betrayed by their actions, and in 1836, the council voted to reject the treaty. Principal Chief John Ross wrote a petition to Congress in protest that contained the signature of pretty much the rest of the Cherokee people.
Yeah.
This treaty was also a turning point in the culture of the Cherokee Nation. Up until the late 1700s, the Cherokee were a matriarchal nation, with women and men leading the council, but women having ownership over all property. This include home, children, and any enslaved people that the family owned. But by the time this treaty was signed, the nation had slowly been adopting their white neighbors' patriarchy. The U.S. government saw this treaty as a done deal and moved forward with their plans for removal. 2 years later, when only 2,000 of the Cherokee people had made the move, President Van Buren sent General Winfield Scott and 7,000 troops to force them to leave. While men were forced into stockades at bayonet point, other soldiers raided their homes. And it didn't say it anywhere, but we can imagine what they were doing to the women during that time.
Yeah.
Before their long march started, they were sent to one of 6 forts or concentration camps that were built throughout western North Carolina and eastern Tennessee. Then the Cherokee were marched over 1,200 miles to Oklahoma, most of them. The reason we have 2 bands of the Cherokee is because a couple hundred brave souls took to hiding in the mountains versus leaving. And this is not to blame the ones who were forced to leave. I don't think they were expected to be treated like how they were.
Yeah.
They thought it would work out. I just wanted to slip that in there because I kind of feel like we should start listening to indigenous people considered they were able to hide in the mountains for a couple decades.
Yeah. Yeah, there's great places to hide here.
Mm-hmm. And there seem to be separate bands of other nations as well in Georgia, Florida, Alabama, and Mississippi. I noticed that there's 2 different bands of the Seminoles. And then there was another one that there's 2 different bands of them from where they were originally at their ancestral homeland and where they were forced to relocate to.
Right.
During this march, they were not allowed to travel through towns and settlements due to the diseases that were running through the group. You know, the diseases that the white man gave to them by giving them blankets. Smallpox patients had been using.
Yeah.
Oh no, it wasn't genocide. They just got sick. Their immune systems weren't used to it. I don't know.
Shit.
Maybe don't give them blankets that smallpox patients had been using.
Yeah. And wash your hands, people. Wash your hands.
This would force them to march out of their way to go around these places, extending their marches even more. When they arrived at the Ohio River, they were charged $1 to ride Barry's Ferry across the river, although the price was usually 12 cents. They had to wait for all the other passengers to get across first and were forced to wait under a rocky outcropping known as Mantle Rock until Barry was willing to take them. Many people died waiting for that boat ride, some from the cold weather and starvation, others from being murdered by the locals.
Damn.
As they crossed Illinois, they encountered some of the worst winter weather they had ever experienced. And keep in mind, many of the Cherokee people have little clothing and most of them are walking barefoot.
Yeah.
It would snow every 2 or 3 days, and the rivers and streams were frozen with 6 to 12 inches of ice. This area between the Ohio and Mississippi River is where this nation took most of their losses. One soldier who had participated in the removal stated, quote, "I fought through the Civil War and have seen men shot to pieces and slaughtered by thousands, but the Cherokee removal was the cruelest work I ever knew," end quote.
I'm sure.
Of the men, women, and children who did start the march, it is estimated 5,000 of the 16,000 people died in the months it took for them to make the journey.
Jeez.
That does not include the rest of them. There was 4,000 other people with them.
Yeah.
It took illness such as dysentery and cholera ran rampant through the people, and there was not enough food to go around. And considering they were forced on this march during the cold months, there was not much to hunt for.
Yeah.
Also, I feel like, hang on. Okay, I do talk about that later. Okay, meh.
Was
Sorry,
like
guys.
the Great Buffalo Slaughter before or after the Trail of Tears?
That I do not know. I have a feeling probably before.
Before. Yeah.
Everybody's like, what? The what? Yes, the Great Buffalo Slaughter, people.
Yeah.
The Great Buffalo Massacre. It's not giving when. Oh, no, I don't want to do that. No, I don't want to talk. I don't. So it occurred in the 19th century. God damn. So it was after. Okay. Yeah, it was after. It was 1889. After they had forced all these people to relocate.
Right.
To where the bison were.
Yeah.
They reduced the population of bison to 541 from over 60 million.
Yeah. That's crazy.
Oh, goddamn. All right. Oh, where are we at? Once they arrived in the new territory, it was not all rainbow and sunshine. Plain Indians had been forced into the land year before and saw the new arrivals as intruders. For the new arrivals, they set about attempting to convert these other nations into a more white way of living. Again, I can't say I blame them for it. They were doing what they thought they had to do to survive, but as we have seen recently, white people can't be trusted to keep their promises.
No.
By 1840, most of the forced removals were over, and the government once again made a false promise, claiming that the quote-unquote new Indian territory would remain theirs forever. But of course, they did not keep this promise, and by 1907, Oklahoma became a state, and it was believed, quote-unquote, Indian land was gone forever. What's more saddening for me was the loss of culture and sense of self, being forced from the land your family has known for millennia to go to a new strange land and give up all the knowledge of these hills did quite a number on their culture and did damage to the knowledge that had been within them for generations.
Yeah.
In 1905, the Eastern Band of Cherokee Indians was awarded $1 million from the federal government. This is where the Gillian Miller roll was created to verify enrollment to be able to apply for the funds. Some people, of course, have argued over the terminology used for these events, but in truth, they were death marches.
Yeah.
They call them the Trail of Tears. They were death marches.
Yeah.
A calculated risk taken by the U.S. government to remove the savage from their lands and kill off as many of them as they could in the process, without actually having to get their hands bloody. The last marches made from the Cherokee were done in very large groups, super spreaders, if you will. Super spreaders. They didn't know what that meant back then. They were just coming off of germ theory at the time, or they were just learning about germ theory at the time.
Right.
So, yeah. There were sizes. These groups were 700 and over in each. We already know most of these marches were done in harsh conditions with no hope of shelter. And for the groups who came last, the resources of the areas they had to go through had already been depleted by previous marches. So,
Right.
your point to hunting, there was nothing to hunt because everybody had done come through there and killed off everything.
Right.
And the government did not send enough provisions to last months on end. Some people label it as ethnic cleansing, while others prefer the term genocide. While others altogether claim that it was not as bad as people claim, there's no evidence that Jackson set out to kill those people.
Yeah,
One
right.
even claimed that Jackson had good intentions and wished nothing but the best for the Indians in their new lands.
Shit.
There's good people on both sides. I like my breathing. And while the Supreme Court might have ruled that a large portion of Oklahoma was still a reservation, the truth is that it is all native land.
Yeah.
All of it.
Right.
If you're interested in visiting the trail, it is not one straight path, but several trails that lead through North Carolina, Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama, Arkansas, Illinois, Kentucky, Missouri, and Oklahoma.
Yeah.
The trail is maintained by the National Park Service, and there are several parts that are accessible. Unto These Hills, a local favorite, is an outdoor drama that recreates the Trail of Tears, or some parts of it. I've actually never seen it.
I have. I've been to Cherokee to see it.
It can be seen at the Mountainside Theater in Cherokee during the summer.
Yeah.
That's also where they had the Ravenlocker haunted house
That's awesome.
that I did not go to because I was like, no, you ain't fucking me with the Ravenlocker. The Remember the Removal bike ride goes from New Echota, Georgia, over some parts of the Trail of Tears, over 950 miles to Tahlequah, Oklahoma. And I hope that we can all take a lesson from this event and watch each other's backs in the coming years. Community is going to be more important than ever. And if you are lucky enough to live near a reservation where you can learn about living off the land, do it.
Yeah.
We may not need the knowledge right now, but better safe than sorry. It is also a way for us to help to keep the culture that the government of this country tried so hard to kill alive.
Yeah.
And that, folks, is the terrible story of the Trail of Tears and the forced removal of the 5 civilized tribes of the Southeast.
Wow.
And if these are the 5 civilized tribes and the Seminoles was Seminoling the way they were Seminoling, I would love to know what the uncivilized tribes look like.
Right.
You know, them bitches were wild.
Yeah.
Like, they showed up and they were just like, nope, fuck these people. Kill them. Kill them. Kill them. Nope. I bet you they consider that one tribe that lives on that island, they're like, what is it, like universally protected by all the countries now,
Yeah.
where like people keep trying to go over there and they keep killing anybody that like goes up on their shore.
Yeah.
Like they just kill them.
Like in
They
South
show up, they
America
just
somewhere.
kill them. They're like, you fucking dead. You dead. You dead. That's what I want to do.
Yeah.
I want an island, and anybody that tries to come on my island is gonna die.
Right.
If you ain't invited, don't come on my island.
Yeah.
Who the fuck are you? So that's the Trail of Tears, Bill. What do you think about that?
It's horrible.
You remember much about that from school?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. They taught us in school about it.
I don't feel like they taught us everything, though.
No.
Like, they definitely whitewashed the hell out of it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, they didn't like, I don't know, portray Andrew Jackson as a bad guy.
No, and Andrew Jackson, hands down, was the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
Like, he was the worst. He was a motherfucker that loved to scalp people.
Right.
Like, he'd cut their throat and then take their fucking scalp.
Yeah. And
Like,
then hang him up.
He was fucked.
That's crazy.
God, he was fucked.
Yeah.
All right, guys. We hope you found this episode enlightening, and we will see you guys next week.
See you guys.
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye.